welcome. Thank you so much for joining us, Will, on the DFI Podcast, where we go deep on Web3 infrastructure. My name is Wes Floyd. I'm joined with Eshan Chordia, my co-host, and Will, we're very excited to have you on the podcast today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I've been eagerly awaiting our time together, so I'm glad we're here.
And so for everyone listening, to give a little bit of background, Will is not only a friend of ours from a former life at Protocol Labs. Will is also running for the United States Senate, and we're extremely excited. And we want to get into a lot of details about his background and how he got to this point and unpack all that. So we're really excited to learn more about his opinions, why he's running for office, what his platforms are about, and also how that might tie into crypto, Web3, technology in general. And so, Will, thanks for joining us.
Well, I know you started a company with campaign finance and the intersection of technology. I'd love to hear more about why you decided to start a company and your experience in building, a campaign finance startup and how politicians think about campaign finance laws and stuff like that.
Yeah, thank you. So I've been in this trifecta of career paths that have all intersected at various points for unique opportunities, but I have a background in emerging technology, national security, and politics. I'm born and raised in New York State. I'm from Rochester originally, which is upstate by Lake Ontario. And I've been living down here in New York City for almost 10 years. Currently in Battery Park, which is right down at the southern tip of Manhattan. Yeah, I've had this kind of career trajectory that has been winding, and at times it's felt like I've had a plan, and then at times it's felt like things have just happened either to me or around me or just in the world. But I've been really driven by this passion for public service. And I think that it's been something that I've always looked for opportunities to make an impact on. And I'm a Democrat, so in that vein, I believe government has a positive role to play in our society, which I know is a controversial thing to some folks today, but I'm happy to own that. And I very much looked through the lens of thinking about government service as being a great way to benefit my local communities, but also talk about and tackle big national issues as well. For a little bit more context on my kind of history to date, but I started on the Obama campaign in 2008 as a campus organizer at Hobart and William Smith, where I went to school, studied political science. I did state and local work with now Congressman Joe Morelli up in Monroe County with the Democratic Committee there as well at circa 2010. Joined the Army. I was an Army Ranger, did a couple of trips to Afghanistan with the Special Operations community. And then I went back to Rochester, finished my degree. I ping-ponged in and out of college here, but which was, again, the winding path of things intended and things not intended. When I went back, I finished my degree at Hobart 2014, 2015. I worked for Chuck Schumer upstate at that time as well. And that set me up to go into the intelligence community after that. And I got a job down here in New York working in a private intelligence organization called Global Risk Advisors, and did some pretty interesting stuff at this intersection of emerging tech and geopolitics. There was a big election in 2016. We might remember here in the US, and there were a lot of things happening globally that were pretty impactful, to say the least. So that gave me a really broad perspective on what I would say are the big challenges facing the country and the geopolitical communities as well. And layered into that was some unique exposure to emerging tech. And blockchain was something that peeked into my portfolio, at the very end of my time at GRA. But it was something that, to me, coupled with some of these problems of corruption and declining trust in democratic institutions, I saw a lot of folks in the blockchain space hedging crypto, hedging Bitcoin, but the blockchain community saying a lot of things about how we can build new systems that challenge the status quo or democratize access to services or different things that have been for so long gatekept or guarded by institutions of old and that have now fallen into either corruption or just have lost the trust of the public. I was very keen on exploring this technology through that lens. And that ultimately led me to start my own company, which is called Schweitzer Laboratories. And we built a platform focused on taking blockchain as a way to bring transparency to campaign finance and metadata around financial transactions. And so it was a good time in IQ. That was also the time my little ones were born and my family was started. Yeah, I think hedge that back to what I said was like, what I got exposed to in my time in the intelligence community was like the problems that we were really focused on the national security level. And this decline in democratic institutions, the decline in trust in institutions was the thing that was pretty top of mind for me. And so I was exploring that, and I was understanding like, why do we suffer from this lack of trust? And being the political scientist kind of that I am too, like I just buried that, or I figured that out, that connection down to campaign finance, and that nobody trusts the politicians anymore. My talking point on it was like, democracies are defined by elections, elections are underpinned by campaigns, and campaigns are fueled by campaign finance. So if you have a corrupted or even the perception of corruption in the campaign finance system, that trickles or that grows up, right, from the campaign to the elected, and then to all the decisions that they make, and then all the agencies they oversee, all the appointments that they make in the government. And so it's at the inception, because the campaign finance institutions in the country are some of the least trusted. And there's a Pew study, I believe, from like 2014 that showed it was like 20%. It was like the least trusted institution in the country was the FEC and our campaign finance laws. But think about that, right? Think about that's the first moment that somebody, a private citizen, even steps into the political arena, and then they're faced with this process that they have to go through, which the public basically, as soon as you step into it, they perceive you as somebody, you're in somebody's back pocket, or you have some ulterior motive, or that you're here to like grift. Think about all the things happening today, like George Santos, obviously Donald Trump. And forgive me, I'm going to be a little bit more skewed on calling out the Republicans, but you can see lots of examples that is for a long time of people taking advantage of the political space. So that was the thing, that was the issue that I identified as being a big challenge. And then, as I said, I was looking out to the blockchain space, and I was just seeing a lot of projects come up. I think I called Evan over at Protocol Labs, like circa 2017. And I was or early 2018. And I was like, I would think I want to do this. Can IPFS help me, or can Filecoin? Like Filecoin was not even a thing circa 2018. It was a unique moment for me where I had like a real use case. I had a real problem I was trying to solve for, and I had a real application of the technology that made sense, where I was like, therefore interviewing, and from like a customer seeking a vendor, I was very much trying to figure out like what would be the platform that existed today, or who was the team that was building the thing today that could make this product, if you will, but this platform that I had envisioned come into fruition. All of that led me down this path to building the company. Came back to, I knew no one else could like was making this intersection. As of, I know, Eshan, you've gone deep into the entrepreneurial rabbit holes as well, but you have to do so much work to validate your assumptions, and you have to look at who's come before you. Am I going to fall into some trap that somebody else has made? So you spend so much time trying to figure out who's done what relevant to the problem you're trying to solve. And I just kept coming up with bigger and bigger names who would talk to me and tell me like, Will, this is a great idea. Nobody's doing this. Nobody's ever done this. Like, you should go for this. You should figure this out. And I'd never started a company at that point. I'd worked at a handful of startups through the IC and figured out like kind of the playbook of how you get stuff off the ground, which was great confidence building for me to be able to go out and say, okay, I think I can do 0 to 1 and grow from there. So yeah, that was it. And I just bring that back to, I was really focused on solving a problem. I was fortunate to make the real connection that blockchain made sense for this. And I can explain the product a little bit more, but it was money. It was rules-based money. And I was like, oh, that sounds like everything everybody's talking about in this space. So let's explore. So that was really a cool like time in the beginning. Obviously a ton of work to get something off the ground, but yeah, many late nights. It was the 9 to 5 after my 9 to 5, and had a couple kids along the way as well. It was just like in this endeavor, I just feel like there are big challenges that our country's facing. And if I'm somebody who sees a path or thinks there's a way to do something that no one else is doing, you're the best catalyst for that change, right? Like just, and feeling capable and confident to have the basics. I've been on a lot of campaigns before. It was like, you know what? I'm going to bring my A game, and I'm going to bring this challenge to Senator Gillibrand. I think from a technology point of view, like it is the story of human history, right? It's not technology, as we think in a way need to like constantly remind ourselves, especially if you're not a pure technologist, like somebody who's an engineer or has taken on an academic like perspective to technology, like people to remember that like the wheel is like technology, right? It's not software, but it was like somebody saying, okay, this thing rolls and we can figure out how to achieve new things with something like the wheel. And that has been technology through that lens has very much been the catalyst to where we are today in society. So I think that technology almost supersedes a lot of social or like certainly government formations. Technology is this quintessential part of almost being human, that we figure out how to adapt to the world around us, make tools, and then I'll pivot into the other side, which is on your point, tools and weapons, which is part of one of the very recent books. Brad Smith from Microsoft, he wrote this book maybe a few years ago now called Tools and Weapons, but it was that book to me was very remindive of this point that we all feel in software, I think very much today, which is an algorithm in one person's hands will do one thing, but if somebody else puts it to task on another thing, like it will have very different outcomes. So we step into this space now, like talking about regulation or like how do we control technology when you have this one thing, right? That is a tool and a weapon, depending on how you use it or depending on what the interests are of the people who control it. These are not new questions, but these are new tools and weapons. I think that to your point, I'm also a super optimist on technology. I think we've learned some hard lessons basically through catastrophic innovations like the atom bomb, like where there's that famous, I think it's a Kennedy speech of we now have the power in our hand to solve world hunger, but also to destroy all of us. And it's just how do we figure out as humans, like what we want to do with these powers. And frankly, that's where I think the role of politics is, to be able to come to answers to those questions without engaging in warfare, right? Like politics is meant to be this non-cataclysmic expression of our deepest differences, being able to reconcile with each other, ideally not through lethal ends. Yeah, I'm an optimist, but I think we all have to be very real. And this was also one of the things I experienced in the military and special operations as well. Is there really are folks out there who, if they were given the opportunity to do terrible things, they would. And that is something we have to be real about as well. So
very fair. Do you mind if I just try to lead you in a certain direction? There's a lot of politics around crypto right now, and also Web3 because of its potential power, because of its potential benefit. There's been laws and regulations that have been brought up in committee for many years now relating to how to regulate them. There are active bills in place right now. Could you give us, just maybe for us and also for listeners, a bit of a sense of what is the state of legislation today? Do you think that government is going to try to have more of an involvement in crypto? Do you think it's better for government to stay out of crypto? What's the right balance? Where would you like to see it all play out?
I would really like I think we have a huge gap in understanding like where all of this is right now. And I don't just mean one coin, the knee jerks of, is this a security? Is this a security? But what's really happening, back to this kind of broader question of like tools and weapons. I think that we have a huge gap in public understanding, but also the political class being able to understand like what is really going on in these innovation ecosystems, we'll call it. And it's like, how do we get certainly politicians to pay attention and to understand that this new technology is here and here are the both positive and negative implications for it. And then you have to really work hard to understand how to regulate that, right? And how to try to get left and right limits, if you will, around the use cases of tech and actors and all that stuff. But I do think that there's been a more assertive effort, I think, of late to understand this generally. And then Web3 and crypto and specifically, I think we are like, it's one step forward, 1.5 step back right now. I feel like right now we're in a back pedal. So I don't know how far back it's going to go. This is why it's a big reason why I'm running and why I'm also like spending the time in the early days to really connect with the crypto industry, the Bitcoin communities, and to understand like where their head is at large on what's happening, but also to give my perspective and let everybody know that I see through a lot of the politicization of what's happening right now. And I think that this is something that is really to the detriment of the public's interest when you have critical technologies like crypto, like blockchain, we'll say Bitcoin as well, like its own little thing. But to say that what we're really staring at here is it's like it all happens slow and then super fast. But we're staring down an alternative financial ecosystem that the United States needs to understand how that's developing, what is our role going to be within that, and or what are the levels of control that the United States needs to exert, can exert, and or should not exert. And I think that this is a very real discussion that a lot of very serious people are having about basically alternative alliances being formed in the world today, where they view the Western financial ecosystem right now to be contrary to their benefits or to their interests. They felt either excluded or that there have been, from their point of view, unfair, punitive issues for them. And so people are exploring how could we create a new financial ecosystem that essentially cuts out the United States using some of this technology. So this is where I get very much back to like, we need to focus on this issue. I believe crypto is a matter of national security because through our strategic focuses, certainly of late, but basically the entire history of America, our financial power has been a key element of our national security apparatus and how we've been able to exert soft power and hard power across the world today. If this is changing, which I exert that it is, the U.S. we need to be very mindful, A, of recognizing that, but B, like figuring out what is the role that we want to play in that space. So I think that's where I go back to, we need a political class that really understands it, really takes it seriously, and is invested in a positive outcome for the United States instead of just thinking like, I don't know, like how a computer works. So I'm just
Facebook, as they say, in the Senate hearings.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, well, that makes a lot of sense. I actually have a couple questions. Why do you think the SEC is attacking crypto right now when they were all buddy last year, pre the FTX scandal? And why isn't Congress passing any bills or legislation that ensures that America stays as the world's leader in blockchain innovation?
Yeah, I think the answer is politics right now. So I think that I have to just make this very fresh, but I do think that what happened last year, this is still last year, starting with Terra Luna, Celsius, the dominoes start to fall, and these scams have been it's been the negative talking point about crypto forever has been and I remember from the national security point of view is Bitcoin crypto, isn't that just, North Korea, that's an Iranian money laundering. This was the perspective that has been out there for a long time, that nefarious actors are using this technology or these currencies first and foremost as just a dirty place to even talk about or be present in. But the point was, from a national security lens, again, like they're in there for a reason because they think that there's something that benefits them, and we shouldn't, and we haven't taken that for granted. I can say that the national security space has been engaged in the crypto world for a long time now. So in that regard, like that was enough, and there's been enough positive growth. And I think a good example is like at Protocol Labs and like building a decentralized storage system and figuring out new use cases for the technology and for the currencies that are like security or not, but like an innovation in a business model or in a technology use case. These are good things to be exploring. But to the politics of it, as soon as SPF dumps a bunch of money into the campaign coffers of folks around the country, and then he gets caught being the fraudster that he is, like that's the reality check that everybody was skeptical of it in the first place. They jump on that, and now we're back in this 2 steps back position where everybody's trying to like, just a lot of finger pointing at the industry. I feel it's been unfair, in my opinion, like with this kind of carte blanche approach to the whole sentiment, if you will, in the space has been politicized. And I don't appreciate that as somebody who knows a lot of people who are doing good things in the community, in the different technology sectors, even within it. I think crypto, I was always surprised, but I remain surprised when I meet like PhDs and like folks coming out of like top tier CS programs, and they're like, this is the place they want to work. These are the problems from the technology point of view, right? What's happening here is just so captivating to so many folks that like, and they've explored it in comparison to other things they could be doing. And it tells me something that like there is really a genuine innovation happening here, that we have to figure out how to do this politely, to say it one way, but like we shouldn't be whitewashing the entire industry based on a couple of bad actors, and certainly not to the extent that it has felt like the SEC had been basically weaponized or taking this very kind of shotgun approach to just like Wells notice here, Wells notice there, Wells notice here, and not having that kind of security within the industry of whether or not you are going to end up on the wrong end of the administration's current perspective. I think there's things that have played out in recent weeks, which maybe are giving us some clarity on how this all goes, which feels good, at least just to have some clarity. But yeah, I think that it really has come down to politics right now. And that's also why I said I'm out here talking to folks in the industry to let them know that I see that. I'm willing to call that out as a Democrat. And I think the Democratic Party has a lot of that. First and foremost, they've taken the lead on basically turning around, and like the administration just all of a sudden is very anti-crypto. I don't think they were at the very beginning. But yeah, I think to put this in the context of what I'm doing, the Lummis Gillibrand bill the new one had a lot of language about intermediaries, third parties that like have to now hold the assets of decentralized exchanges. So to your point of, do they understand the technology? There's things in even the recent legislation that make me very curious about that question as well, because maybe we're purists in this conversation in a way, but and a lot of this innovation in currency specifically is about saying that you don't need these intermediaries, that like you shouldn't have these third parties in the first place. And that really is a lot of the innovation with this in the first place. And like what Satoshi like wrote about in the Bitcoin white paper, we cannot trust the banking sector. And that, by the way, is like an antiquated model now that he had built Bitcoin. So I think it's loaded to say there's a lens there that makes a lot of this current legislation, to me, not feel like they either get it or that they're able to look into the future. But there is also a reality check on that, which is like regulators and legislators have a hard time dealing with things that aren't actually real, right? So the fact that it is still very cumbersome, for the reason why centralized exchanges are here is because it's not so easy to custody your own assets and to do your own trading and all that stuff. Like you have to have you have to either learned it from somebody who could teach you it, or you have to basically be able to dig into the technical aspects of doing that yourself. There's a challenge there, I think, from our lens as industry folks, which is to say we still have a lot of work to do to make the technology fulfill its potential, so that like the user experience, if you will, can make it so that the innovation is realized. Yeah, I'm skeptical. I'm skeptical to say the least of like how the current legislation or proposed legislation is being brought to bear.
But I was going to say, are there any healthy pressures? Have you seen any other countries? Because it is such a global market, and it's competitive. The U.S. is back up. Maybe the U.S. is in some sense in the competitive race versus other countries to host these crypto companies. Maybe lawmakers care. Do you think lawmakers care about the risk of those jobs, the revenue going overseas? Do you think other countries, have you seen examples of other countries that have done it that you would like to emulate?
I do know that what's happening in Japan, there's a lot of people excited about. I think Singapore remains like a very crypto friendly space. And then the UK has put forth some new proposals as well. I think you touch on a great point, which is about jobs and the economic basically benefits of allowing the industry to thrive in your country. I think that is maybe still more of a point that like we need to hammer home, and to say that this is missed opportunity. I'm running here in New York, like the financial hub of the world in many ways. It's wild to think that New York would not be a place where this type of innovation is happening at like the highest levels and the most advanced speeds. So I would like us to figure this out very quickly. That's to put it like broadly, but there are other countries that are competing for, I think, the sector's preference, and to bring not just technical custody and set up your data center here, but to bring the digital nomads or the folks with the actual jobs who are, going to be paying taxes or in those countries. These are things that the United States it's like easy for us to understand that this is a job of the future in many ways, or even the catalyst to many other jobs of the future. And to be approaching this so relatively punitively through a political lens and not understanding that there are real people here. And I think that, and because you have divided houses, or the House is held by Republicans, the Senate's held by Democrats. Democrats don't have the 60+ majority to push overcome the filibuster. Point being, like, even if the House gets a bill all the way done, because it's a Republican-led bill, it's not going to go anywhere in the Senate, and almost vice versa. Even though certainly the Lummis Gillibrand bill is bipartisan, I don't think that there's enough political joint sentiment on really wanting to get this done in the near term. There's also the reality of what's playing out in the courts right now. So a lot of folks in the last couple of weeks are certainly with the XRP ruling, but are pointing to the fact that what's actually happening with the cases that the SEC has brought is they're moving through the court system. And we should expect that the court rulings will actually be the next thing to give us clarity in what's coming next. So I think from that lens, again, there's even less of an incentive for the two sides to figure it out in the near term. I think what they're both just trying to do is basically play politics with the industry and try to create funding opportunities for each other. I look at the Gillibrand bill, the Lummis Gillibrand bill, and I noticed that there was they were trying to paint a lot of it as commodities and get a lot of it over to CFTC oversight, which I think is what the industry wants to hear. But I go back to, is that going to be what wins the day in these political struggles, or is this just a bill that's appeasing the industry in the near term so people feel good about it? I don't see either bill, certainly as the way they are today, whether or not they influence each other. I just think the politics of a presidential cycle and crypto being crypto, like the fact that it's been politicized, is going to matter. We also have the White House to consider as well. So even if they pass it, the White House has to decide that they want to go with it. And the White House has not turned around and become very crypto friendly yet. So I think that there's a lot of lobbying to be done to a lot of folks. Certainly the White House is one of those key players as well. We're really trying to do something here.
Well, one follow-up question for you, Will. This would be super interesting, especially because you're from New York and you're representing the state of New York. I'm based here in Atlanta, Georgia, so I'm a little bit further away from the financial side, but I'd love to hear your opinion on as regulation gets crafted and the politics gets influenced, sometimes private industry has a role to play in terms of education or lobbying. The financial industry in New York is massive, whether it's investment banks or retail banks, there's a lot of muscle there. Do you have any opinion or sense of when the banking or the financial services industry looks at crypto as it is today? Decentralized finance is a big space. It's probably maybe the biggest in Web3 by market cap. Do they see it as an advantage? They want to they want to bring under their management. They want to offer these decentralized finance services, or are they telling legislators, hey, try to avoid this. Let's stay away from this because it's dangerous and want to stay with traditional finance. Do you have any sense of how that is playing out or how that should play out?
I believe that the traditional like TradFi or traditional finance, that's trade finance, sorry. But the traditional finance folks at this point are encouraged by what's happening. I think that there's been a long wait and see, but now like just the fact that the Bitcoin spot ETFs have been proposed, there's clearly an appetite for the big players to try to benefit from the technology and from these currencies. So I think that's, we can start to piece this all apart into, there's a lot of focus on Bitcoin, and there's a lot of interest on Bitcoin in particular, and then crypto and all the variations thereof I think there's a much longer haul there to figure out what are the kind of altcoins that the big financial players would really get behind. And if they see a path to financial opportunity for themselves, then I'm sure they would want to engage. But it certainly is at a macro level, it's encouraging to see big institutional players want to participate. But we can go back to technology level. Isn't this all about trying to break down the necessities for these players? And we should also, I can talk about this rather intimately, but we should also understand that the banks and financial institutions have been playing in blockchain and crypto themselves for a long time now as well. And that's not something that I think is often brought to the surface through public conversation. If you're a stockholder in JP Morgan or one of the big banks, you pay attention to the reports, you'll probably see the continued investments in their technology teams and the readouts of their own progress on what they're doing and the exploration they've been doing. But this has been going on for a long time, where the banks have been trying to figure out what's the role of blockchain in our ecosystem. Are there cryptocurrency applications that we should be thinking about as well, and building themselves, right? There's a bunch of work that the banks have done to try to figure that out. And I think there's stuff coming on that side as well, which is good, but also back to that sentiment is this technology. I'm split. I know there's lots of instances where blockchain and even a private blockchain to me makes a lot of sense for what you're doing. But if it's a currency application of the blockchain or the crypto tech, is it public? Is it better to be public in different instances or not? Or is it these kind of contained ecosystems within the banking sector where they just are going to trade with each other? They're not going to allow retail folks to come into that. And this all noodles into digital dollar, the CBDCs, and FedNow, which just got rolled out for instant settlement. So point being, there is a ton of investment and focus on this technology that the institutional players are continuing to look at and examine. And it's our role, I think, is the technology community, the builder community within this space to understand that that's all happening as well. And that we should be mindful of not getting like too upset one day or the other, but also worried about control, right? And if this IP is going to become something that's completely privatized, or if there are ways that from a public chain point of view, we can actually create some of these new financial ecosystems that don't rely on unreliable partners or institutions.
So it sounds like Senators Lummis and Gillibrand have recently released a second version of their crypto bill. I think they had released a first one maybe a few months ago or last year. I'm not exactly sure. There's also a crypto bill in the House. What do you think of the Lummis and Gillibrand bill? Does it solve their problems? Does it not? I read the summary of the bill and some tweets about it, and it doesn't really seem well thought out in the sense that it's mainly focused on centralized exchanges, but blockchain and crypto are, so much more than just centralized exchanges. And centralized exchanges aren't even the main point of crypto. So I'd love to get your thoughts on it.
Yeah. So this is, I don't want to be like too politician-y right here, but give you like a non-answer. But it's frankly the specifics of the bill without giving you a play-by-play of it. I like that they went in and tried to do something about consumer protection. That's a good thing. Talking about tax implications, that's a good thing. More clarity there. Obviously, again, we talked about the CFTC and kind of this like whitewashing of or a pathway to commodity, and therefore putting CFTC in a more empowered position within all this. I think that the bill itself is reflective of a genuine effort by mostly Senator Lummis, but a lot of the people in the industry came out for the first version, and there have been a lot of teams that have been helping to craft the second version. I think that the second version is a little bit too reactionary, as I said. I think the elephant in the room on it is Elizabeth Warren. Senator Warren took a very hard line on her stance on the crypto industry. And you can see a lot of the consumer protection components is like capitulating to what she has raised as issues and concerns. There's stuff in it that, to me, it's like, how genuine is this? Or is this, again, reactionary to what we're just dealing with right now? But I'll really answer the question by saying what I think is the solution, regardless of what the legislation that's proposed today is or isn't, is that we need more elected officials in Congress who understand and are willing to engage with this technology at a really genuine level, instead of it being a reactionary to try and raise money off of the sector or trying to appease like the political polarization of the moment. I think that we really need to upgrade our politics. It's one of my little talking points, but we need to upgrade our politics. We need to get folks elected who are not just digital natives. It's not really the thing, but are just technology natives. Like people, I think it's a generation or occupational kind of switch, like a little bit less lawyers in the room and a little bit more innovators or builders in the room. I think that we're at this moment in human history, frankly, that's a potential renaissance here, right? With what's happening in technology at large. And we need folks who are more in touch with that and willing to look through that optimistic lens in how we craft the kind of path forward. So I think that it's all about getting folks into office who understand like how this could go very like positively for the country, for individual citizens, for investors, but getting more and more of us elected is going to be the thing that ultimately I think makes the most impact. A non-answer, but I really think that it's time for change across our legislative bodies. I think we need new perspectives, new people who are more plugged in to all this.
I really hope that Congress asks opinions of like real builders such as Brian Armstrong and others, people who are building in the crypto space for a bill, because they're the ones who are actually doing the work and understand it the best. Like we have all these senators sitting or Congress people sitting far away from where all the innovation is happening, and they're making up these bills that really make no sense. But I want to switch gears a little bit. Can you talk a little bit about why you're running for office and why you're running against and why you're running in the primary against Senator Gillibrand?
I do think this intersection of emerging tech, national security, and the political implications of all together is pretty unique about my background. And I think that being able to look at any given technology, and this can be like carbon capture technology, it can be new software in the financial ecosystem, or pick your wheel that's being built out there today. Understanding how to look at technology through through a set of lenses that understands not just consumer benefits, not just business and profiteering benefits, but things like national security implications and socioeconomic implications. Understanding like the technology might be in one community versus another community, and what one person thinks this is going to be versus how it's actually going to be. I think we need folks more engaged in that on the tech lens. And I think that I bring that to the table, rocking my NASA shirt over here, but I've had a breadth of experiences working in the emerging tech side, which includes working with NASA on new cryogenic systems that they were building for the space industry, and understanding just how innovation is happening all around us, and that it really is a dynamic moment to be able to stack all these things together and to say, great, we really want to get the space sector to be flourishing in the United States, as an example. What are some of the challenges? One challenge is like space is this pretty contested national security domain. And even though we more or less know like a handful of actors who have launch capabilities and or have put tools up there, like how do we monitor for surveillance systems and security and safety up there? And oh, by the way, this thing like a blockchain is actually a super secure, really like expensive to penetrate database, to put it one way. And there might be there might be a reason to be investing in this technology because it helps some ancillary industry be more secure in that. And looking at how you layer technologies together relevant to what are the impacts in a sector or in the country, geopolitically, these are the things that I think make me unique to the space. And I have had these real experiences working with technologists and scientists across the country in multifaceted domains that I think, makes me a pretty strong candidate to do better than what we have.
And I know just in the interest of your time, I'll give you one last question, then I'll hand it back to Eshan in case Eshan has any more. One spicy take from last week. I don't know if you caught this in the news, but there was a hearing in the House related to the government, social media topics and related aspects that may or may not have happened with Twitter. Do you have any opinion? Because one of the emerging use cases for crypto and Web3 is decentralized social media. Do you think decentralized social media would be a net good thing for the American population? Do you think there are risks there? Would that help any of the existing challenges that we've seen? Do you have any opinions about that space?
I have big opinions about it. It was a lot of actually our time at Protocol Labs. I came in like charging on this idea of what could like a Web3 based social network look like. But I think that this is actually like the killer sets of questions and use cases that really define or will define like how we think of the internet of its next generation, which is around things like owning your own data, controlling access in and out of it on your terms. Social media is just like this massive honeypot right now of getting all of this consumer data into it. And it's been exploited by just pure capitalist means, but also people with nefarious intent or people who just don't care. And they just want to make a buck and are willing to steal information and sell it to the highest bidder. And because it's all, not all so weak, but there's many ways that people have proven to be able to get this information out of these centralized systems today. And the fact that we're just beholden to the decision of one technocrat versus another versus the benevolent leader of the technology spaces, right? This doesn't make us feel good. So I think that this is one of the big promises, I believe, of crypto and of Web3 is to be able to re-architect some of these experiences that we've had and now are like almost second nature to us. Would you rather DM somebody on Twitter or call somebody on the phone? Right? Chances are you don't have their phone number. So you're going to DM them, right? Or we just have evolved already in how we're connected. And therefore we should be very concerned about what we're giving away through all of these interactions. But I think really digging in and really investing in these technologies that can prove to be more beneficial to the end users, private citizens, give us privacy, let us control our information. I think that these are the things that are unique to Web3 and Web3 technologists. And yeah, I'm very passionate about thinking about the new iteration of the internet and making back to where we started, this threat of the US not being a crypto friendly nation isn't just about maybe this token or that potential DeFi thing is or isn't going to play out here. It's like the human talent component, right? Like we're going to push human talent overseas or not be able to attract the best human talent to our country because we're not friendly to them. And therefore we would miss out on folks who are trying to build non-DeFi applications, but like things like a new decentralized social media platform, right? Like these are the things that solve real problems, in my opinion. So we need to be focused on them.
Dude, that's awesome. Thanks for answering all of our questions. Well, I have one last question for you. And this is something that, like, as you've been talking about, I wanted to ask, but you're running for the senator for New York, and you're going against the Senator Gillibrand in the primary. Why should people vote for you over Senator Gillibrand? What do you bring to the table that she necessarily doesn't?
So I'm a big anti-Trump guy, and this was like when it all started. I think we've now seen this play out. Obviously, he's somebody who can bring together a mass to perform violence against the state. Like what happened in January 6th is a real moment, and we should appreciate that this is somebody who truly means harm to our country. So for me, it's about thwarting Donald Trump's vision to rise again here and take the presidency, which is just a ludicrous. I just can't imagine us back in that boat because it happened once and we've learned that lesson. I'm just emboldened to do whatever I can to prevent that again through the cycle. And that just happened to play itself out here in taking on Senator Gillibrand, who I view as one of the most ineffective and disconnected political leaders in the Senate. She has a lot of problems across New York where she doesn't show up to to meet people where they're at. She's like notoriously absent from local issues, which is not playing out well, as she now is even like running for election, right? Like I'm here primarying her and she's showing up and it's almost reminding people that she hasn't been here before. And then she has this ineffective issue, which she just has turned, I think it's like since 2019, she's gotten like the third least bills out of committee in 2019, the seventh least number of bills in 2020. There's no data for 21 that I have. And then last year, she was like the fourth least effective of getting her bills out of committee. She also ran for president in 2020, and that has rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, that she's self-interested again. She's not showing up, but she's out here trying to run for president. So there's a strong mandate. There's a lot of dissatisfaction within people here in New York with her lack of leadership today. These are the things that kind of set up this opportunity to have a primary here. Present myself as we've all been talking about so far, which has been great. It hasn't been many times. I'm just talking about why should we have this primary and answering this question first for a lot of people. I think all the discussion we've had already, I hope is highlighting that I'm somebody who's plugged into what's going on, has fresh perspective, is like driven by public service first and foremost, and really believes that Senator Gillibrand is fallen short and there's no sign of her like being able to be more effective here if she's reelected. Like she's at an all-time low in internal popularity amongst her peers, and the public has soured on her as well. So the point of the primary is to hold our leaders accountable and to make sure that we have representation that is going to benefit, everybody here, because real people have real problems. We're talking about tech, but there's a lot of things that folks can't even get access to tech, right? So don't even have high speed internet across the country, right? Like all this great crypto stuff would be awesome for somebody if they could only get online for more than 30 minutes, right? So there's a lot of work to do. And I think that I'm just somebody who's more willing and has a history to prove that I'm right for the job right now.
Will, can you tell us, for folks that want to get involved in the campaign, folks who want to support the work that you're doing, folks who want to help out, what can they do? Where can they go?
Yeah, thanks. Willforus.com, the number 4. You can also type it, it'll get you there. But willforus.com is my website. You can find my priorities list there. You can find the link to donate. You can find the link to volunteer. And I'll give you a non-public link, which I think this community might love, but willforus.com/tech, which is not on the main homepage. We actually just open sourced some of the technology that I previously built through my company, which was a campaign finance compliance system. And we're really focused on building a community of tech innovators who are going to join me in this effort to open up the barriers of entry into our political system. This is a small but big task that I've taken on, as well as understanding like how campaigns run today and how the political process works today. And through my campaign, we'll be building technology and databases and resources that we want to empower lots of folks to be able to access so that they can run their own. I'm with you, Eshan. I want more folks who are new to the space to not feel so like it's impossible. And I want to take all the learnings that I have and all the abilities that I have to get more people engaged in the process. We're building a nice little tech hub that should be democratizing some of these tools that make it a lot easier to not just participate, but get in there, run for local office, run for state office, join me in the Senate. Let's go.
I'm super excited about young people our age, et cetera, running for office. I think it's time that people who grew up with technology and technology native people are making decisions about how the government regulates technology, and not as opposed to people who don't really get it. Like we see so much in Congress, especially in the Senate, about people zoning out when tech companies come and are giving talks at Congress, asking really poor questions, not really getting it. So I really hope that more young people run for office at all levels, not just the federal level, but like state legislature, local elections, etc.
I love it. Brilliant. Thank you so much for taking some time to join us today. And we could probably talk with you about crypto and regulation for hours, but I know that you got a lot on your hands. And thank you for taking some time out of your busy schedule to join us.
Yeah, of course. Anytime.
And we'll have you back next time after you win the nomination to talk about how we celebrate.
Yeah, of course. We'll probably do it before then too, but yeah.
Very good. Very good.
All right.
All right. Thanks so
guys.
much, Will. Cheers.